The man who pulls away is not broken, he is terrified, and nobody ever told him that his fear has a name. There is something happening in the space between avoidant men and the people who love them, something so precise, so psychologically loaded, that when you understand it, everything shifts. Not gradually, immediately. The dynamic that has been keeping you locked in cycles of push and pull, hot and cold, connection and sudden distance, it does not have to continue. There is a reason he retreats. There is a reason the walls go up the moment something real begins to form. And more importantly, there is one specific thing, not a manipulation tactic, not a trick, not a performance, that cuts straight through that armor in a way nothing else can. Most people never discover it. They exhaust themselves chasing, fixing, shrinking, over-explaining. They read the books, analyze the texts, rehearse the conversations, and still, the avoidant man slips back behind the glass. What you are about to learn is not about changing him. It is about understanding something so fundamental about human fear and human longing that when you apply it, the wall does not get broken down. It simply becomes unnecessary. The architecture of avoidance is not built overnight. Every man who pulls away, who goes cold at the exact moment warmth becomes available, who sabotages connection just as it deepens, that man was taught to do it. Not in a classroom, not consciously. He was taught by the earliest experiences of his life, in the moments when he reached out for comfort and found nothing there, or worse, found something unpredictable. A mother who was sometimes present and sometimes emotionally unavailable. A father who equated vulnerability with weakness and treated tenderness as something shameful. A childhood environment where the safest strategy was to need less, feel less, want less. The nervous system of an avoidant man is not malfunctioning. It is doing exactly what it learned to do to survive. And that is the first thing you must understand with absolute clarity. His withdrawal is not a statement about your worth. It is a scar that formed before he even knew your name. Psychology has a term for what drives this behavior, attachment theory, and the work of John Bowlby and later Mary Ainsworth revealed something that should have fundamentally changed the way we raise children and navigate relationships. When a child's early caregivers are consistently responsive, the child develops what is called secure attachment. They learn that the world is safe, that people can be trusted, that reaching out for connection is rewarded rather than punished. But when the caregiving is inconsistent, dismissive, or emotionally cold, something else forms entirely. The child learns to suppress their attachment needs. They learn to self-soothe in isolation. They learn that depending on someone is dangerous. And they carry that blueprint into every relationship they will ever have as an adult. The avoidant man sitting across from you, disappearing into his phone, retreating into work, pulling back exactly when you need him most. He is running a program that was installed in him decades before this moment. Understanding that does not excuse the behavior, but it does change the entire nature of your response to it. Here is where most people go catastrophically wrong. When the avoidant man pulls back, the natural human response, particularly for someone with anxious attachment tendencies, is to pursue, to text more, to explain more, to reach out, check in, ask what is wrong, try to fix the distance. This feels like love, it feels like care, it feels like fighting for the relationship. But to the avoidant nervous system, pursuit reads as threat. The more you chase, the more suffocated he feels. The more you try to close the gap, the faster he moves to widen it. You are not doing something wrong because you care. You are doing something that feels completely counterintuitive. Your love is triggering his defense system. And so the cycle continues, tightening with every rotation, until one or both of you break. What you have to understand about the avoidant man is that beneath the wall, beneath the stoicism, beneath the carefully constructed self-sufficiency, there is an aching longing for exactly what he is running from. This is not a contradiction. This is the precise center of his psychological wound. He wants intimacy desperately. He wants to be known, to be held, to be close to someone in a way that is real and enduring. But intimacy to his nervous system is also the most dangerous thing in the world, because intimacy requires vulnerability, and vulnerability for him has historically been the prelude to pain. So he built the wall not to keep love out permanently, but to test whether love is strong enough and safe enough to be trusted. The tragedy is that most people fail that test, not because they do not love him, but because nobody told them what the test actually looks like. The single most misunderstood thing about avoidant men is this: they do not need you to be warmer. They do not need you to be more understanding in the way that most people think of understanding. They do not need grand romantic gestures, longer conversations, more reassurance, or more proof of your devotion. All of that activates the very circuitry that makes them retreat. What they need, what functions like a key turning in a lock that has been rusted shut for years, is something almost opposite to what instinct tells you to give. They need you to be a regulated, non-reactive, genuinely secure presence, not a performance of security, actual security. The distinction matters enormously because avoidant men are extraordinarily sensitive to inauthenticity. They have spent their entire lives reading rooms, detecting emotional undercurrents, and identifying when someone's stated calm is actually suppressed panic. You cannot fake this. You have to build it. There is a concept in neuroscience and relational psychology called co-regulation. From the earliest moments of life, human beings regulate their nervous systems in relationship with other human beings. An infant calms when held by a calm parent. A dysregulated nervous system seeks regulation through contact with a regulated one. This is not metaphor, this is neurobiological reality, and it continues throughout the entire human lifespan. When you are in a state of genuine calm, not suppression, not numbness, but actual grounded presence, your nervous system communicates that to the people around you through dozens of microsignals. Your voice tone, your breathing, the pace of your movement, the quality of your eye contact, the space you allow between words. The avoidant man's nervous system, which is perpetually scanning for threat, for demand, for the emotional weight that historically preceded pain, it detects your regulated state, and something in him begins, slowly, to unclench. This is why the one thing that melts the avoidant man is not what most people expect. It is not a specific phrase or a particular conversation. It is not setting an ultimatum or giving him space in the passive, withdrawn sense that most people think of as giving space. It is the radical, disciplined, deeply challenging act of becoming so secure within yourself that your peace does not depend on his response. When he pulls back and you do not collapse. When he goes quiet and you do not spiral. When he needs distance and you genuinely, not performatively, not resentfully, give it without it destroying your sense of self. That is when something shifts in him. Because for the first time, the equation that his nervous system has always run comes back with a different answer. The equation that says, if I let someone close, they will need things from me I cannot give. They will fall apart in ways I will be responsible for. Intimacy will cost me my autonomy and my selfhood. That equation stops computing. Because you are not falling apart, you are standing, you are whole. And wholeness, to a man who has spent his life surrounded by emotional demand and relational instability, is the most compelling thing he has ever encountered. Think about what it means to be a genuinely secure person in the presence of someone avoidant. It means you have done the interior work. You have sat with your own anxiety and learned its contours. You have identified where your need for reassurance comes from, not from this man, not from this relationship, but from your own history, your own wounds, your own early experiences of love being conditional or unpredictable. You have stopped outsourcing your sense of worth to his behavior. You have built a life that is rich and full and meaningful, independent of whether he leans in or pulls back on any given day. You are not waiting by the phone. You are not constructing elaborate theories about what his silence means. You are living, fully, presently, with genuine investment in your own becoming. And that life, that fullness, that self-possession, it is magnetic in a way that nothing else can replicate. The avoidant man has encountered, in almost every relationship prior to this, a pattern that confirmed his deepest fear. That closeness destroys individuality, that love is a slow erosion of selfhood, that the moment you truly let someone in, you begin to lose yourself to their needs and demands and emotional weather systems. He has watched relationships consume people. He has felt the gravitational pull of someone else's anxiety and need, felt it pulling at him, demanding he be more, give more, feel more than he knows how to give safely. And so he learned to keep the door open just a crack, enough to feel the warmth, not enough to let the flood in. What breaks that pattern is not forcing the door. It is becoming the kind of person that makes the door feel safe to open from the inside. The door opens from the inside. That is the sentence you need to carry with you through everything that follows. Because the fundamental mistake that people make with avoidant men is that they stand outside that door and knock, louder and louder, more and more desperately, believing that if they just find the right words, the right tone, the right moment, the door will finally swing open. But the door was never yours to open, it belongs to him, and the only thing that makes him want to open it himself is the discovery that the person standing on the other side is not going to rush in and rearrange all the furniture the moment he does. Security is not a passive quality. This is one of the most important distinctions you will ever make in the context of this particular dynamic. People confuse being secure with being unbothered, with being emotionally flat, with suppressing their feelings behind a calm exterior. That is not security. That is avoidance wearing a different costume. Genuine security is dynamic. It is active. It means that you feel the pull of anxiety, you feel the discomfort of uncertainty, you notice the fear that rises when he goes quiet, and you choose, consciously and deliberately, not to let that fear dictate your behavior. You process the feeling. You acknowledge it to yourself with honesty. You do not perform calm while internally catastrophizing. You actually do the work of returning to your own center. That work, that daily, unglamorous, deeply personal work, is what produces the quality of presence that cuts through an avoidant man's defenses more effectively than any tactic ever could. There is something Carl Jung understood about the human psyche that applies with extraordinary precision here. He spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves that we have disowned, suppressed, refused to integrate. For the avoidant man, the shadow contains everything tender, everything soft, every moment of longing, every experience of genuine need, every tear that was swallowed rather than shed. He pushed all of it into the darkness because the world he grew up in told him, explicitly or implicitly, that those parts of him were unacceptable, weak, burdensome, dangerous, and so he built his identity in opposition to all of that. He became competent, self-contained, reliable in practical matters, emotionally minimal. He became a man who does not need much and does not ask for anything. And for a long time, that identity served him. It kept him safe. It kept him functional. But it also kept him profoundly, achingly alone. Even in the middle of relationships, even in the company of people who loved him. What you are doing when you show up as a secure and genuinely self-possessed person is something that is almost alchemical in its effect on his shadow. You are demonstrating, through your actual lived presence rather than through words, that vulnerability does not destroy a person. That need does not have to become neediness. That softness and strength can coexist in the same human being. You are, without saying a single word about it, living proof that the thing he buried in his shadow is not the weakness he thought it was. And that witnessing, that quiet, consistent, non-pressuring demonstration, begins to work on him at a level below conscious thought. It begins to make the shadow feel slightly less dangerous. The buried parts begin, almost imperceptibly, to stir. This does not happen quickly. You need to be honest with yourself about the timeline because impatience is the enemy of everything that is being built here. The avoidant man's defenses were constructed over years, sometimes over decades, and they will not dissolve in response to a single beautiful conversation or one weekend of genuine connection. In fact, one of the most reliable features of avoidant attachment is what researchers call the proximity-seeking paradox. The closer the avoidant person gets to genuine intimacy, the more urgently the alarm system fires. So you will have breakthroughs followed by withdrawals. You will have moments of real connection followed by days of distance. You will feel at times that you are making progress only to watch it seemingly evaporate. This is not failure. This is the texture of the actual process. Understanding that the withdrawal after connection is not rejection, it is the nervous system recalibrating after an experience that felt simultaneously wonderful and terrifying, changes your entire orientation to those difficult moments. Your response in those moments of recalibration is everything. When he has a breakthrough of genuine openness and then retreats, the world, according to his internal programming, expects you to pursue, to demand an explanation, to make the retreat mean something about the relationship's viability. When you instead hold your own ground, when you remain warm but not clingy, available but not hovering, present but not suffocating, you send a message that his nervous system cannot easily dismiss. The message is this: your distance does not frighten me, your retreat does not mean I will abandon you, and your return, whenever it comes, will be met with the same quality of presence that was here before you left. That message, received consistently over time, begins to rewrite the program. It begins to replace the old equation, intimacy equals threat, with a new one. This person equals safety. The concept of earned security is one of the most hopeful findings in all of attachment research. The original categories, secure, anxious, avoidant, were not meant to be permanent sentences. They were descriptions of patterns, patterns that formed in response to specific relational environments. And just as those patterns formed in relationship, they can be reformed in relationship. A person who grew up with insecure attachment can develop what researchers call earned secure attachment through experiences of genuine, consistent, emotionally regulated connection. The avoidant man can change, not because you fixed him, not because you said the magic words or executed the perfect strategy, but because sustained exposure to a genuinely secure relational environment gradually, organically, restructures the way his nervous system experiences closeness. The brain is plastic. The attachment system is not a life sentence. But the environment that facilitates that change has very specific qualities, and the most essential of those qualities is your own groundedness. Think for a moment about what it feels like to be in the presence of someone who is genuinely comfortable with themselves, not arrogant, not performing confidence, genuinely at ease in their own skin, with their own company, with the uncertainty of life. There is a quality to that presence that is almost physically palpable. It is calming in a way that has nothing to do with anything they say or do explicitly. The avoidant man, who has spent most of his relational life feeling the emotional weight of other people's needs pressing against him, experiences that quality of presence like a man coming in from a cold wind into a warm room. He does not immediately trust it. His first instinct is to look for the catch, to wait for the demand, to anticipate the moment when the warmth becomes conditional. But when the warmth remains unconditional, when your peace does not fluctuate based on his emotional temperature, something in him begins to settle. That settling is not dramatic. You will probably not see a sudden declaration of love or a tearful admission of everything he has been holding back. What you will see is something quieter and more meaningful. He will linger a little longer than he usually does. He will mention something small from his day that he normally would have kept to himself. He will reach for your hand without calculating whether it is safe to do so. He will make a joke that reveals something real about what he is thinking. These are not small things. In the economy of the avoidant man's emotional world, these are enormous. These are the first green shoots breaking through ground that has been frozen for a very long time. And if you receive them without making too much of them, without pouncing on the vulnerability and asking for more, without treating every small opening as an invitation to push the door wider, they will keep coming, slowly, organically, on his timeline, which is the only timeline that actually works. The discipline required for this is real, and it is significant, because everything in you, particularly if you carry anxious attachment tendencies yourself, will want to respond to those small openings with an outpouring. You will want to say, "Finally, yes, this is what I have been waiting for. Tell me more. Let us go deeper. Let us have the conversation we have been needing to have." And that impulse comes from love. It comes from longing. It is not wrong to feel it. But acting on it in that moment is like watering a newly sprouted seed with a fire hose. The love is real, but the volume is wrong. What the moment calls for is a steady, quiet warmth, an acknowledgement without amplification, a gentle, unhurried receive of what he is offering without immediately asking for more. Receiving without immediately asking for more is an art form, and like every art form, it requires practice, self-awareness, and a genuine understanding of what you are actually doing and why. Most people have never been taught to receive. They have been taught to respond, to reciprocate, to match energy, to escalate toward deeper connection whenever an opening appears. Those instincts are not wrong in the context of secure attachment between two relatively regulated people, but in the specific ecosystem of avoidant attachment, the ability to receive quietly, to let his offering land, to honor it without amplifying it, to simply be present with what he has given without immediately reaching for the next thing. That ability is one of the most powerful relational skills you can develop. Viktor Frankl, who survived the unimaginable horrors of the Nazi concentration camps and emerged with a philosophy that has guided millions of people through their darkest moments, wrote that between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space lies our freedom. That space, that pause between what happens and how you react, is precisely what you are cultivating when you learn to receive without grasping. The avoidant man offers something small, a moment of openness, a sentence of genuine feeling. In that space between his offering and your response, you have a choice. You can collapse the space immediately with your own hunger for more, or you can inhabit that space fully, let it breathe, and respond from a place of genuine presence rather than anxious momentum. The response that comes from presence is always more accurate, more appropriate, and more connecting than the response that comes from need. He feels the difference every time. There is a particular kind of courage required in this process that almost nobody talks about. It is not the dramatic courage of grand confrontations or difficult ultimatums. It is the quiet, daily courage of continuing to invest in your own life and your own becoming, even when the uncertainty of his feelings is sitting in your chest like a stone. It is the courage to go to the dinner with your friends and genuinely enjoy it, rather than spending the evening monitoring your phone. It is the courage to pursue your own creative work, your own physical health, your own intellectual development, your own spiritual deepening, not as a strategy to make yourself more attractive to him, but because those things matter in themselves, and you have decided that your life will be full, regardless of how this particular story ends. That decision, that genuine, unconditional investment in your own wholeness, is not selfishness. It is the foundation of everything, because you cannot give from a place of depletion. You cannot be a regulated presence for someone else if you are running on empty, if your sense of meaning and purpose is entirely dependent on the outcome of this one relationship. The avoidant man watches all of this. Even when he appears absent, even when he seems entirely self-contained and indifferent, he is watching. The avoidant person is exquisitely attuned to relational dynamics. They had to be, because reading the emotional environment accurately was a survival skill in their early life. He notices when your energy shifts. He notices when your fullness is genuine versus performed. He notices the difference between a woman or a man who is living richly and one who is using the appearance of a full life to mask an anxious waiting. He cannot always articulate what he is noticing, but he feels it. And what he feels when he is in the presence of someone who is genuinely, unconditionally invested in their own becoming is something that his internal architecture has no existing category for. It does not match the template of relationships he has known. It does not confirm the old program. And that dissonance, that beautiful, disorienting dissonance, is the beginning of something new being written. Dostoevsky understood something about human suffering and human transformation that the self-help industry consistently gets wrong. He understood that the deepest changes in a human being do not come from the application of techniques or the execution of strategies. They come from encounters with something real, with someone real, with an authenticity so complete and so undefended that it bypasses all the intellectual defenses and lands directly in the place where the wound lives. You cannot manufacture that authenticity. You can only arrive at it through your own honest reckoning with yourself, your own fears, your own wounds, your own history of love and loss and longing. When you have done that work, when you have sat honestly with your own shadow and begun to integrate it, you carry a quality that is unmistakable. A quality that the avoidant man's defenses, sophisticated as they are, simply do not have an adequate response to. Because his defenses were built to manage emotional demand and relational need, they were not built to manage genuine wholeness. They were not built to manage a person who is fully themselves. This is the profound and somewhat paradoxical truth at the center of everything being said here. The way to reach the avoidant man is not to focus on reaching him at all. It is to focus, with total seriousness and genuine commitment, on becoming the most integrated, grounded, self-aware version of yourself. Not for him, not as a tactic, but because that is what your one life is calling you toward, regardless of any relationship outcome. The relationship becomes the context in which that work happens, not the reason for it. And when that shift occurs, when your own becoming is no longer contingent on his response, something alchemical happens in the dynamic between you. The pursuit energy dissolves, the anxious monitoring fades, the push and pull begins to quiet, and in that quiet, for perhaps the first time, he can actually hear himself. He can hear the part of him that wants to stay. The person who transforms this dynamic is never the one who loved harder. It is always the one who loved wisely. And wise love begins not with the other person. It begins with an unflinching, honest, courageous turning toward yourself. The avoidant man in your life is not a puzzle to be solved or a wall to be demolished. He is a human being carrying wounds he did not choose, running patterns he did not consciously design, longing for something he does not yet trust himself to reach for. Your work is not to rescue him from that. Your work is to become so genuinely whole, so deeply rooted in your own worth and your own life, that your presence becomes the safest place he has ever stood. That is not a small thing. That is not easy. That requires everything you have, every ounce of self-awareness, every act of daily discipline, every choice to return to your own center when fear pulls you toward panic. But here is what is absolutely true. The person you become through that process is not just better for him. That person is better for you. That person is who you were always meant to become. Stop waiting for him to feel safe enough to love you. Become the person who makes safety real. Start today. Start now. Start with the next breath you take.